Game of the week in the Pac-12 is Washington at USC, number 5 against number 20. USC needs a win way more than Washington does.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with our media rights and soon to be mostly team-free, but until then, beloved and loaded Conference of Champions. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, please, and thank you wherever you listen to or watch the show, which today is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Full preparation for week 10. That's my goal on today's show, is by the time you listen to this episode, you'll know everything you need to know going into the weekend. And the biggest thing you got to know is that USC needs to beat Washington way more than Washington needs to beat USC. That doesn't mean that it doesn't matter for the Huskies. I'm not saying they're going to roll in and have this mentality of, we don't need anything like that. But from a practical standpoint, it matters a heck of a lot more to the Trojans. So USC's got 3 games left in the regular season. They're 5-1 in Pac-12 conference play. Washington is the lone unbeaten at 5-0. The Huskies are also 8-0 on the season, number 5 in the college football playoffs first rankings. Washington's remaining games include Utah at home, at Oregon State, and hosting Washington State. They will be favored in all of those games. Maybe it'll be close against Oregon State. Probably depends on what happens in this game against USC. I'd suspect, though, they'll be favored even in Corvallis, which is a very difficult place to win. USC, with 3 games left, will go up against 3 teams currently ranked inside the top 20, including a pair of top 10 teams. Right now, they have to go at Oregon after they host Washington this week. And then to end the year, they host UCLA. Those are USC's 2 remaining games. The Trojans, I know everyone's, kicking dirt on their graves and everything like that because they can't make the college football playoff and they're not good enough to get there and yada, yada, yada. But USC controls its own fate to get to the Pac-12 championship game. Now, I, like many of you out there, do not believe USC is about to go 3-0 in their next 3 conference games. I think winning at Oregon, where they're right now, according to FanDuel, about a 13-point underdog, is going to be pretty tough. Beating Washington is going to be pretty tough. UCLA is not going to just roll over and hand you a football game. They are really physical. USC is not. So the Trojans, if you assume that they're going to lose at least one more game, they can only lose one more game to get to the Pac-12 championship. Washington, on the other hand, can absolutely afford a loss. Would it feel great? No, of course not. Would it raise the tension level for Husky fans for their final 3 games, all of which are against quality opponents? We'll see how Wazoo's playing at the time. I hope the Cougs are able to bounce back and, beat Stanford this week, beat Cal next week, and try to get the ball rolling again going into the Apple Cup, which is not going to be played in 2024, which is a bummer and a half. Maybe. We'll see. But at the very least, Utah is tough, and that going to Oregon State is really tough. But Washington is also a really good football team. So if they lose to USC, their hopes for a Pac-12 title still rest in their own hands. And then from there on, they can still get to the college football playoff. Because if they're going to put together a college football playoff caliber resume, Washington will have, if they lose to USC, but then win their next 4 games, one of which would be the Pac-12 title game, they will either have avenged their loss to USC in that title game, beaten Oregon for a second time, and there's an outside chance maybe they play in Oregon State for a second time. In all likelihood, it'd be USC or Oregon, depending on how this weekend's matchup goes. So beating Utah, winning at Oregon State, beating Washington State, and then another quality win in the Pac-12 title game. That resume, in my view, that's putting you into the college football playoff. Period, point blank, end of discussion. I don't think there will be an issue there. So I'm not saying that Washington should take it off, rest guys, don't try to win. No, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you have to win each of your last 3 games to assure a spot in the Pac-12 title game, or you have to win your last 4 in order to reach the college football playoff. But just from an outside standpoint, this game means a lot more to USC, who still, despite all the craziness and all the negativity, control their own path to winning the Pac-12 in the last year of the conference's, iteration as we know it. So the Trojans have to have this one, because if they fall this week, hard to see them winning next week at Oregon. Then they play UCLA, but a third conference loss, you're out. 7-2 in conference play, though, you can get in. You can do it. USC's 5-1 right now. They've either got to win this week against Washington or next week against Oregon. But if they go 1-1 and beat UCLA, they can put themselves in a really good position, or they could win all 3, end the regular season 10-2, and look back at what might have been against Utah again in a close loss. So that's where we stand, and that's why it matters more for USC. I think it's going to be an awesome football game. I'll have my pick later in the show. The over-under, by the way, is at 76.5 points. And just a quick note on what ends up defining that game, it's going to come down to defense. Spencer, what are you talking about? You got NFL quarterbacks, you got NFL receivers, you got big time offenses, you got yeah. Stay tuned for a little tidbit on that. I want to talk about the other big game of this weekend. UCLA, number 19 in the college football playoffs, first rankings of the year, traveling to Arizona, fresh off an upset win over Oregon State. Some of us predicted it here on the show dating back to August. We don't need to talk about that right now or name said individuals, because this is the game that matters. Did you know that Arizona and UCLA have the same conference record? Did you know that if Arizona had a Power 5 team, Mississippi State in this instance, cancel on them the way those cowards at Michigan did with UCLA and scheduled a cupcake, that Arizona would be ranked inside the top 25 right now? They'd be 6-2. If they played a non-conference schedule, the caliber of UCLA's, Arizona would absolutely be 6-2. That's the screwed up world of scheduling in the college football realm, but that's a discussion for another day, and a point I make an effort to bring up as often as I can here on the show, because those issues don't necessarily go away with all this conference realignment craziness that I'm not a big fan of here. But Arizona does not have a 0% chance of reaching the Pac-12 championship game. Does everybody realize that? I'm going to let it sit just for a moment. Okay. We've let it sit. We've let it sit. We know. Arizona is 3-2 in conference play. What if they go 4-0 down the stretch? Let me read you Arizona's schedule here down the stretch. Not predicting this, just saying, hey, we know Arizona's a good team. They play UCLA this week. They play at Colorado. They'll be favored against the Buffs. They host Utah. Bryson Barnes has a ceiling. We've seen it once before. That Utah game is at home, by the way, in Tucson. And then they go at Arizona State, who currently has a record of 2-6. Curious, isn't it? Curious that anyone would look at UCLA and say, number 19 team in the country, 2 losses in Pac-12 play, outside but non-zero chance of getting to the conference title game if they win the remainder of their games. Arizona's in the exact same spot. They just don't have a number next to their name. That's the only difference right now as it pertains to the Pac-12 championship. Arizona, if they play the way they did last week against Oregon State, can win all 4 of those games. I'm not sure if they will. I'm not sure if they'll get 4 wins in their next 4 tries. But do I think it's impossible? No, not at all. Not at all. That is the sneaky best game of the weekend. Washington USC, it's a big headliner. Of course it should be. It's Washington USC. You got NFL quarterbacks. You got big brands. You got, playing at the Coliseum and everything like that. Okay, I get it. I'm here for it. It's going to be an awesome game. UCLA is just a 2.5-point favorite on the road against Arizona, a place where then 11th ranked Oregon State saw their college football playoff hopes die and saw their Pac-12 title hopes become greatly diminished. Arizona could put the nail in UCLA's Pac-12 title hopes this week if they do it again. That pick coming a bit later in the show as well. But A lot of things to get to, including like what's going to define those two particular games. Couple of keys for the big matchups in the Pac-12. The key for you when it comes to getting your next tickets to whatever event that may be is going to GameTime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I know, what a concept. Make it easier for the consumer. GameTime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That is Locked On College for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Alrighty, a couple of keys here. Before we get to predictions and Pac-12 prime picks. USC and Washington, mentioned this earlier in the show, is going to come down to defense. Why? The over-under in this game is the highest of any total I have seen in a college football game this season, according to our friends over at FanDuel. It's 76.5. Why? Well, both teams on the year are allowing over 400 yards a game. Not exactly near the top of the Pac-12 conference in that regard. In fact, defensively, both are outside the top half. Washington's number 7, USC is number 9. So neither team has been sparklingly great. Washington had a great game defensively at home. It won them the game against Arizona State. They're on the road this week. They went on the road to California last week and gave up 33 points. You may be wondering, well, did they go play UCLA? No, they played Stanford. Not exactly a power, an improved football team. Throughout the course of this season, Stanford has done nothing but play better since they lost to Sacramento State on their home field, an FCS school and the former coaching stop of their head man, Troy Taylor. Since that embarrassing loss, they have since played a respectable brand of football, picking up a road win in a hostile environment, trailing by 29 at the half to Colorado. They're a 4th down drop away from perhaps going down the field and kicking a field goal for the win against the Washington Huskies. They have played pretty darn well, and they're in the Pac-12 prime picks coming up in just a moment. But neither defense has been exceptionally good. And offensively, both teams averaging over 480 yards per game, most of them coming through the air. Washington throws the ball for, 399 yards a game. They have this guy, Michael Penix. He's pretty good. USC is somehow 4th in the conference at 328. So the Trojans definitely have a more capable ground game. I think this game comes down to which defense makes a stop or a play. I think Washington's defense is more likely to get a traditional stop on a 3rd or 4th down. I think USC's defense, as we've seen over the last couple of years, is more likely to force a turnover in a big spot. And I think whichever defense comes up with that particular moment, a lot of points are going to be scored. That is everybody's expectation, including Las Vegas. They're there to make money, not just set lines willy-nilly. They understand offenses are going to shine. So when you consider that both offenses have been great this season, Washington's a tad more consistent, though they did have the Arizona State game. We'll see if they're getting back healthy and whether or not Jalen McMillan plays and the flu bug is gone and everything like that. Offenses are going to be able to have some success. Which defense comes up with a stop there? And in the UCLA-Arizona game, the other best game of the week in the Pac-12, who runs the ball better? Ethan Garbers last week at the helm because Dante Moore turned it over too much. Turnovers. UCLA's offense has just been a turnover machine. If they run the football, though, you make it a lot easier for Ethan Garbers or whoever's playing at quarterback. I suspect it'll be Garbers. But I look at that game and say, Jonah Coleman, I shout him out regularly on the show. Why? He's the most underrated running back in the Pac-12, maybe in the country. He's really good. So with that in mind, if Arizona doesn't run the football well, that UCLA front four is going to pin their ears back and give Noah Fifita problems. Who's great, who is not interception free, but is not a turnover machine necessarily. I think the team that runs the ball better will protect the ball better. So defense making a stop, that's the key to USC Washington. Whoever runs the ball better in UCLA, Arizona, I think they win that football game. Which brings me to this week's edition of the Pac-12 Prime Picks, brought to you by FanDuel. All of these lines coming off of a winning week, 3-2. Shout out to Arizona for covering and winning outright. I don't give myself extra points for that. I'm currently 2 games under 500. So make of these picks whatever you will. I am determined and trying my best to not repeat last year's number of about 48, 49%, trying to be a little bit better. And unfortunately, I'm on track for 48, 49% right now. So let's turn it around and start with my favorite bet of the week. Washington -3 at USC. What did I just say is the biggest key? Which defense comes up with a stop or a play as the shootout ensues? Which defense are you going to trust there? Washington's or USC's? I've seen Washington's defense win them a football game this year when the offense was completely dormant, did not score a touchdown. I haven't seen USC's defense do that. They made a play on a 2-point conversion last week against Cal. Yeah, they did. Do you trust Washington's offense more than Cal's? Because I do. I tend to lean towards, I think I like Washington's offense a little bit more than the California Golden Bears. This is going to be a fun game, big matchup. As I mentioned earlier, means more for USC than it does for Washington. And I think the Trojans will play an inspired brand of football because of that. Their last chance to control their own fate to the Pac-12 title game, it starts every week. I think Washington gets it done, though, with a late stop, 45-41, swallow the 3 points on the road. And I do think they go over that 76.5. Could be a fireworks show. I'm going to be here for it. It's going to be like a Big 12 game. Arizona against UCLA, +2.5 at home. Second straight week, I'm going to ride the Cats. I'm going to ride the Cats +2.5 here in a low-scoring affair. I do not think you have a ton of points in this game. UCLA's defense is great. Arizona's defense played very well against Oregon State last week. I think this UCLA offense is just okay with a great defense there. Arizona squeaks by once more, gets themselves in the top 25, and I think they can force a couple turnovers of that UCLA quarterback situation, which is just a revolving door all the time. Arizona 21, UCLA 20. I think it looks a lot like last week against Oregon State, and I think the Wildcats at home squeak it out. Oregon State on the road at Colorado. I went back and forth on this one. My initial instinct is, nope, too many points for Oregon State on the road. Beavs on the road don't do well. Lost to Washington State, gave up 40 points to Cal, lost to Arizona. Not here. This is a bad matchup for Colorado. Colorado's run defense this year has been, wait for it, not very good, allowing 10th in the Pac-12, 165 yards a game. Oregon State offensively, they run the ball very, very well at about 187 yards per. I think Oregon State runs for over 250 yards in this one and wins the game. 13.5, big number to swallow on the road. Hostile environment. I think Oregon State takes the crowd out of it early with a dominant rushing attack. And that great offensive line goes up against a weakness of Colorado's, which is their front four specifically. And Oregon State runs the ball all over the field. I think they start slow out of the gate, eventually find their footing. Oregon State 31, Colorado 16, a slight cover there in Boulder. How about Arizona State? Oh boy, this is an interesting one. I did not go back and forth on this one. I picked a side and I chose it immediately. You can choose your picks immediately over at Prize Picks because that's the largest daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, it's just you against the numbers. That's it. That's all it is. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you can do LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. Be a good over bet, by the way. So go to Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Get them at prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. That's where you got to go to get in on the action for daily fantasy sports made easy. prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. The side I landed on here is Arizona State. Getting 11.5 at number 18 Utah. I don't think the Utes are losing 2 in a row in Salt Lake City. No. Nothing crazy like that. This Arizona State defense, though, is legit. They are legit. They play really well. They play really hard. As a 2-6 football team, they shouldn't play as well as they do. Guess what? They do. And they allow the 4th fewest yards in the Pac-12. They're right in there in the same category as Arizona, a team that is currently 5-3. And I think Arizona's defense is solid. And I think ASU's the last few weeks has been outstanding. I don't trust Bryson Barnes in this spot. I think he showed his limitations last week against Oregon. Arizona State's defense is not as good as Oregon's, okay? They don't have as much talent, and Oregon's is also very well schemed, and they've played at a high level this season. Arizona State getting 11.5 is too many points for me to say, I think Utah blows them out. Like, I think that defense is enough to keep it close, keep it low scoring. Utah wins, Arizona State covers 21-13. And finally, my last Pac-12 prime pick of the week. I'm going with another dog. 3 dogs and 2 favorites this week. Nice little balance. Stanford getting 13.5 at Washington State. I just can't trust this Cougs team. I want to. I want Washington State to right the ship. I want them to win their next 3 games and be 7-4 going into the Apple Cup. I really want that because I think that game, which won't be played in 2024 and God only knows when it could be played next. I want it to be as epic as possible. I want Washington State to have the narrative on their side with regards to playing in a power conference. I think that Washington State finally gets off the losing skid here at home after dropping to a 1-6 Arizona State team last week entering the game. I think they win, don't think they cover. I think that their defense has been too porous, and Stanford's offense is in a nice groove. It's in a really, really nice groove. Washington State's offense was not bad against Arizona State. It wasn't great. They put up 27 points on the road against a good defense. Pretty good. I think Stanford scores enough to cover. I'll take Washington State, though, 31-24 over the Cardinals. So Pac-12 prime picks for the week. Washington -3, Arizona +2.5, Oregon State -13.5, ASU +11.5, and Stanford +13.5. Let's have a great week. Wrapping up with the California Golden Bears, not a Pac-12 prime pick. They are going against my Ducks at Autzen Stadium. I think this is full steam ahead for Oregon. Can't trust Cal's defense because they've been playing horribly, which is not a normal thing to say about a Justin Wilcox team. 45 points per game in their last 3, all losses. I think that kind of continues here. The line's at 24.5. I'm staying away for 2 reasons. Number one, Oregon's been beating people by a lot. I wonder if they don't play a closer game than some might expect eventually. I just don't really know when. It could be this one. It could be ASU. It could be USC. I think we'll just kind of have to wait and see, though the Ducks are playing really well. And the weather forecast could make this a complicating factor. Both teams might be running the football a lot in this one, and 24.5. That's a lot of points. My score prediction is Oregon 49, Cal 17. I don't feel strongly about that enough to put it in the Pac-12 prime pick so it stays out, but that is my final pick for the week. So you are now, as I wanted to have accomplished in the beginning of the show. Fully prepared for a full slate of games in the Pac-12. It's going to be awesome. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time and have a wonderful rest of your day.